Welcome to another edition of the Deep Cover Podcast. It's the NBA playoffs right now, and we're in the second round, and things are really heating up. You have some really intriguing series. You got Dallas, OKC, New York, Indiana. But I think maybe the most intriguing series is Minnesota, Denver. And as of this recording, game three was last night, and Denver is now down 2-1. Earlier in the week, Nikola Jokic, Denver's superstar center, won his third MVP award. And I want to talk a little bit about him and just the overarching greatness that we're seeing from Jokic. So it's his third MVP in the last 4 years. It's really the first time this has happened since LeBron James did it about over a decade ago. And it's a rare thing. It doesn't happen often where you have a player this dominant stringing off a bunch of MVPs in a row or in a quick sequence. Jokic is such a unique player. He doesn't look like what we expect an elite center to look like, quite frankly. He's a bigger guy, doesn't have a great vertical leap, but what he does have is incredible scoring ability from all three levels, can shoot the three, mid-range, very good, post-ups, under the basket, all excellent. He's an unbelievable passer, might be one of the best passers we've ever seen in this game, big man or not. He finds passing lanes that we didn't even think existed, right? And that is just one of the things that makes him so special. Additionally, he just his footwork is just on another level, right? And he's able to maneuver his way around the post to create space, create angles that allows him to score points in bunches. And when we really look at him here, he's, I think, the best center in the NBA. But there's an argument to be made. He's on track to be the best center that ever played. And off the top, that sounds hyperbolic. It sounds like a little much, but if you consider the fact he's 28, soon to be 29, rarely has missed games, no injury history, you could see him playing at this level with his style until he's 35, 36. And by then, he will have accumulated stats, accumulated more awards, potentially accumulated more championships. He has one right now, which, of course, they won last year. And he is just a fascinating personality as well, right? One of the things I love about Jokic is he has a very everyman mentality. And this is what I mean by that. Jokic is the type of guy that looks at playing basketball as just his job, right? There's always been kind of joked about how when he's at press conferences, he says how he just can't wait to go home to Serbia to tend to his horses and all this stuff. A lot of people kind of make fun of it and say, oh, does he even like basketball? Here's the thing. If you were to talk about your job, you're not overly committed to your job. It's your job. It's what you pay. It's what you do to pay your bills. And it's what you do to provide for yourself and your family if you have one. And either you're not overly committed to it because you have a life, you have hobbies, you have passions outside of your job, outside of your career. That's all what Jokic is doing. So in that aspect, it's incredibly relatable. A guy who just is doing his work, does it well, so he doesn't slack off or anything, gives great effort every single time, and then he goes and does what he actually wants to do when it's not work time, right? And that's relatable. And I think it's so weird for us to encounter that as American watching sports viewers because we're used to Jordan, Kobe, this maniacal obsession with being 100% locked into basketball. And that's great for those guys. It's been a key to their success. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. But there is something that's refreshingly relatable about the fact that Jokic has priorities for his hobbies, his family, his brothers, the whole thing, his wife, and he has a very strong connection to his homeland. And I think that's a beautiful thing, right? When you're looking at him now, he also has kind of reformulated the archetype of the modern center for a while there, it seemed like the center position was fading away a little bit, right? There was a assumption that the league had shifted to a wings league, right? And there weren't any dominant big men anymore. But now you have Jokic, you have Embiid. You've seen great things from guys like Karl Anthony Towns, Rudy Gobert, Domantas Sabonis. And now it seems like he's kind of ushered in this rejuvenated center position. And what the new center is exactly what Jokic is: a great passer, a great pick and roll man, a great shooter, and somebody with excellent footwork. And if you have all of those things, then you might be a great center. You see it in Şengün in Houston. You see it with Wembanyama in San Antonio, what he's going to become. You see it with Sabonis in Sacramento. And these are all guys who are able to pass, create, shoot, do all this stuff. Versatility is the name of the game. And I think that originates from Jokic. He is just a fascinating, interesting player, an interesting person overall. But the whole package of him is just a joy to watch, right? And the West is getting better, which makes it that much more interesting because great players are measured on titles. Jokic has one already, so he's already surpassed a few of the other big men that we look at historically as the all-time greats. Can he get more? That's a big question. Will he win more MVPs? How many more accolades can he accrue? And I truly believe that if he starts racking these up and staying healthy in the process, we might be looking at one of the best centers ever. I think right now he's in the top 10 today. You could make an argument he's better. He's achieved more than what Ewing achieved, right? Which pains me as a New York Knicks fan to say, but he has a title. He has multiple MVPs. Two things that Ewing was never able to do. And as I continue to watch Denver, watch him, I'm just transfixed. I want to see them do well. I want to see him achieve those heights because I think we should all appreciate this greatness that's in front of us. This week, to talk more about Nikola Jokic, I'm joined by Chris Lebron of the Off the Ball Network podcast and sports journalism network. Chris has been in the podcast game for about 4 years. I contribute to his website as a writer, as well as appearing on a few of the network's podcasts. We talk a lot about Jokic's greatness now, his historical significance, the fact that he was a second-round pick and has elevated to such high levels, and just an appreciation of everything that he does, and especially in the context of the NBA today. So join me after the break with Chris Lebron from Off the Ball Network to talk a little bit about Nikola Jokic and what makes him just such a fun basketball player to watch. All right, joining me now on the Deep Cover podcast is a good friend of mine, fellow Knick fan, president, founder, everything for Off the Ball Network, Off the Ball podcast, is my guy, Chris Lebron. Chris, thanks for jumping on the pod. Appreciate it.
Omar, pleasure to be on. Excited about your new venture with this podcast and all that. So happy to be a part of it, man.
Yeah, so a little behind the scenes for everybody. Chris and I have kind of collaborated on a variety of things. You could see a little bit of my written work on offtheballnetwork.com. I've jumped on his podcast, on a few other podcasts that are within the Off the Ball universe, I guess, with Hooper's Pod, For the Love of the Game with Nick Andre, Knicks Fans Wild Day, of course, the OG Off the Ball podcast. So I've been meaning to get Chris on the show for a while. Just wanted to find the right topic, and I think we got it this week. So we're going to dive all into Nikola Jokic. And the reason I wanted Chris on here is, like me, Chris has a deep appreciation for the history of basketball. And when you have an appreciation for the history of basketball, you can kind of appreciate greatness when it's in front of you. So, Chris, first of all, Jokic has just won his third MVP. And it puts him in a very, very elite group of players who've won the award 3 times. Guys like Jordan, Kareem, Moses Malone, Larry Bird, those type of guys. So, first of all, I guess I'm be honest. When we did our Off the Ball Network award stuff, I didn't have him winning. I had SGA, OKC winning. Did you have Jokic winning the award this year?
No, I had Luka.
Okay.
I had
Well,
Luka.
tell me why. Tell me why you had Luka.
I had Luka winning because the stats were there, scoring championship, and especially the second half of the season, like he went on an absolute roll. And even if you just watch defensively, they took it up a notch, and that starts with him. And it's crazy to think that Luka and defense, you don't put that together. But if you just watched, he was a better defender, like on ball defender and Avs team defender, and I think they were like top 10 in defensive efficiency the last like 30 to 40 games and all that. So I think it's hard. I think Luka has a big part of that because of, if he's lackadaisical, then the defense isn't going to roll like there has been the last few years. But he stepped it up defensively this year. So I thought, and then on top of the scoring, and then some of the games he had this year were just absolutely just crazy and all that. The 70-point game he had against Atlanta, and just how he just put this team on behind his back. Almost, I mean, the numbers are just outstanding and all that. And I always said, if he finishes top five seed, he's the MVP for me, because I think the thing early in the season was he was putting up stats, but they were like an 8 seed, or they were in the bubble. They were essentially in the play-in category. Yeah. I said, if he's firm in the top 5, he's the MVP for me. I honestly still might have would have gave it to him, even if it was, because that's how good of a season he was having. So that's why I went with Luka for MVP, because the stats backed it up, and defensively, his defensive effort going up definitely helped the defense around them, why they were a top 10 defense for a good portion of the second half of the season. So that's why I gave it to him. No, there's nothing on Jokic. He had a tremendous season and all that, and SGA too, but I just felt like Luka was the best player this season, and he put up the best stats, in my opinion. So that's why I kind of went with him as my MVP. I had Luka, I followed it by Jokic, and third I had SGA.
Yeah, my thought on SGA was, you get the number 1 seed, and he's so important to everything they do. And just like all 3 of the guys, he had the numbers as well. He had the seed, and it was just such a big leap with such a young team. Yeah. And I felt like that warranted, MVP consideration and all that. And I think everybody had those 3, right? It's just a matter of what the order was. So it's not a knock on SGA for you having him 3 or not having Jokic 1. I do think for a lot of people, there has been a little bit, I should say, of Jokic fatigue. We saw that last year with his race against Embiid, but, he ends up with it this year, which again, well-deserved.
Can't stand that, because in fairness, you kind of screwed him out of 4 straight MVPs in a way. So because you got tired of him,
right?
Yeah, which you got tired of him for not voting him last year, right? You gave it to Embiid and all that. And I don't like the rebuttal, like, oh, well, Embiid got hurt, so he wins. It's like, all right, we can't slight them, because dudes get hurt. It happened throughout the year, every year of the MVP. So we can't just do it because he's won 3 out of 4. And people are like, oh, all 3 of his years, it was kind of like, well, he should have went to Embiid. Well, Embiid didn't play enough games, so that's his fault. We can't do that. We can't play that game. I don't like when that happens. We're like, oh, Jokic had a tremendous. If you think Jokic was the MVP, I was cool with that. All 3 guys to me were deserving. If you thought SGA won it, and I feel like this is the one year where it's kind of like, my thing majority was either Jokic or SGA, but then like a little bit of Luka too. And I was in that Luka camp. I would have been fine with it 3. If you said SGA was MVP, I get it. Number 1 seed. He took the Thunder from maybe a play-in type team to a number 1 seed. The rebuild, whatever you want to call it, from them is going a lot quicker. Same thing with Jokic, and everybody else, Luka. So yeah, I don't think that this year you can have a wrong answer. I mean, you throw in our guy too. He can have a say. So, but those 3 guys you can't go wrong with. And then Jokic is, that's impressive. 3 out of 4 is that's really impressive.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about that. Obviously, it's the first time something like this has happened since LeBron in the Miami days, right? Where you get 3 out of 4 or 4 out of 5 in the case of LeBron. And it speaks to dominance. It speaks to him being the best player in basketball. So I guess for you, what has made his last 4 years just so impressive to watch, just as an outside observer?
I think just how he just doesn't rush the game,
Mm.
especially when you're a guy. It's kind of like with Luca. Like you're there. They aren't guys who are explosive. Same thing. SGA. SGA's not explosive, and that's what's so impressive. Our guy Brunson too. Not explosive players, and I think that's more impressive when you're not explosive and you're able to get to your spots willingly.
Mhm.
Like it's super impressive with these guys, but especially with Jokic. Like I mean, we might have higher verticals than this man, and it's just his ability to kind of process like a quarterback. Like he understands reads, he understands route concepts, and it's crazy. You don't really think of route concepts in basketball, but he has that type of vision. Like it is like Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Patrick Mahomes-esque, where he's able to see the field and understand 3 steps ahead what he's going to do. And it's just really impressive because he's not doing it he doesn't have an array of all-stars around him. Murray's a borderline, but no one around him's an all-star. So he's doing it with guys that are not, these superstar players, and he's able to put them in the right spot and be able to find guys. And he's not just people say, "Oh, he's the best big man passer of all time," and that might be right, but we just got to ask if is he one of the best passers, period, of all time. Like it's he's in that category. It's no longer just big man. He's not Arvydas Sabonis or Joel, whoever whatever great big men that are great passers, Tim Duncan and all that. He's up there with Jason Kidd and Steve. It's really impressive how good, obviously his size and all that, but his ability to get to his spots and just be able to maneuver his body, use his body, and just find, like I said, find the passing lanes. His read is, like I said, he understands. His vision is so good. He understands where guys are going to be, knows exactly where to put the ball at, and that's been the most impressive. Seeing him from just a few years ago, his first MVP, where people were like, is he really MVP? And then now it's like, all right, this guy is taking another step into legendary territory. Like, and I know sometimes, especially in this era, I think people are afraid to like put the newer guys in those categories. It's what we've been going through with LeBron James forever. People, I think, are afraid to say he's better than MJ or whatever. I think we're kind of afraid to put the newer guys in those categories with the Russells and the Chamberlains and the Shaquille O'Neals and all that. So, but Omar, he's in there, man. And he's just his evolution, and he's made his teammates better. Like we're talking about non-all-star type players, and he's elevated their games. Aaron Gordon was we were kind of like, Aaron Gordon, Orlando, he's not a number one and number two, and that might have been right, but he was in he went to the perfect spot in Denver and fit his role perfect. Jamal Murray, their 2-man game they're able to do with 2-man action is just superb and all that. Like I said, Jamal Murray he's an all-star level player, just obviously in the West. He may never get in an all-star game because it's just too loaded with the guards and all that. But the cohesiveness with the coach. That's another thing too. We constantly seeing coaches get fired left and right. I mean, KD's gone through his 6th coach since he left Golden State. I mean, and to have Malone there and have that cohesiveness with that's a big part of his growth too. Because having that one guy, that one staple that believes in you, is big too. So just seeing how they run their organization and let him grow, and it's been really, really impressive to see his growth. And like, I mean, this guy's a 2nd-round pick, Taco Bell, the whole Taco Bell commercial.
Story, yeah.
And he was in a draft class where it was it was Nurkic. Nurkic was the big they took first. That was they thought Nurkic was the dude and all that. And and that's something we got to do for maybe a podcast, or I know our what could have been podcast is what if they chose Nurkic? So there's so many things, but it's just been impressive to see him grow and all that. It just, the big man, he's brought the big man back, which I love because I grew up as, loving the big guys and all that. So it's seeing him, evolve. The big man has evolved too to be like a 3-level player. You've never seen that. So it's been impressive, man. He's just so much fun to watch.
Yeah, the passing is just, it's like he sees things happening before anyone else sees it, and you just like marvel at it. And the court awareness is just through the roof. The pick and roll stuff that you mentioned, you allude to there, is just, that's the insane part, right? Because you're able to use him either as the screener or the initiator in the
Mm-hmm.
PNR. And that's just like it's matchup hell when he gets into it with Murray,
Oh,
because he's such a good passer and because he's so physical. So it's just like it's almost impossible to guard. And, to their credit, Minnesota's done a pretty decent job this series that they're playing in right now. But he has just elevated the whole big man concept as a modern big, right? Like you mentioned. And I guess want to focus in on that for a second is it almost seems like he's part of this resurgence of centers, right? Him, Joel. Giannis is a power forward, but he's another big guy who's really climbed to new heights. The emergence of Wembanyama in San Antonio. So when you kind of look at this era of big men, is it really him and everybody else, or would you put like Joel on that same footing as him?
It's resume wise, you would put them in the same category, because obviously the MVPs and all that. I think Joel is there talent wise too, but it's just circumstances. Bounce of the ball against Toronto 19, and maybe he's in the conference finals, and maybe he has a chip. If he's healthy the last few years, maybe he has a chip. So I think that's the difference. I mean, skill wise, it's been they're right there, and there's points where Joel looks like he's the best center in the NBA, because he can dominate a game. I mean, we saw it against the Knicks, even at 65s. I don't even know if he was 65%. He might have been 55%, and he still looked like a dominant type player. So imagine him at close to full strength, but we just haven't seen that. Joker's been more healthy and all, and that's cost him Embiid some MVPs too. But the centers and all that, it's been really impressive to see the center kind of come back, because it kind of, not that it was dying a death, but it was we kind of had like one or a couple. Like I remember that Dwight Howard, Andrew, it was like that was it, and all that. And they kind of evolved into different types of players. They went to more fours and more the KD types we were seeing. Right? We're seeing those guys evolve, but now we're seeing those big guys can still, but now those big guys have evolved, because we grew up with just back to the basket type guys. Now if you can't pass out of the post, you can't play. You simply can't play as a big man. And that's why, we're seeing these centers being more skilled. I mean, Towns you want to consider him a center. I think he's a center and all. I know he's playing a four with Rudy there, but he's more of a center, but he's shooting threes at 38%. So the evolution of center has been really, really like crazy and all that. And just like I said, with Victor coming out, Chet, and all that, we're seeing all these guys, and there's just some guys that are even in high school that we haven't even seen yet that are like, whoa. So we're going to see them come back. The big man is coming back. They're just coming more skilled.
Yeah, I think you're seeing like the Jokic archetype kind of be the new standard for centers. A guy that I think of immediately with that is Şengün in Houston.
Oh, and Sengun. Oh, I love him. Yeah. I had him top 5 coming out of the draft, and people were going crazy. I was like, his footwork is impeccable. It is some of the best footwork I've seen. I don't know if you remember Jahlil Okafor.
Yeah, I
like
remember.
Jahlil Okafor for me was like, he was so like his footwork was elite and all that. So when I compared them a lot to each other and all that, but just Sengun has elite level passing. Like he's there, but yeah, the footwork on Sengun, he's going to be special.
Yeah, and that's kind of like, I feel like Jokic has popularized that 3-level scoring, high level IQ, passing, footwork, all that stuff has become the Jokic model, right? Whereas like you could argue like back in the day, a lot of centers, they're trying to be like Kareem, where there could be a big body in the post, have this array of post moves, this go-to shot, whatever. And then you saw guys like David Robinson, Patrick Ewing, Hakeem Olajuwon, who kind of came in this pipeline. And I think the new pipeline is what Jokic is doing, unless you're Wemby and you're just a freak of fucking nature, And then,
but like with Jokic, when you're not athletically gifted, right? Well, you just can't blow past guys. You better have good footwork, and that's what we've seen from even the guards who aren't athletic, like Brunson and SGA. Why they're so successful? Why are they able to get to the hoop? It's their footwork, man. They have elite footwork, and that's what you see from Jokic is that footwork. Like sometimes he'll be in the post and he'll get stuck, right? A guy will contest him and he'll just boom, and he'll take a few moves, but he'll figure it out and he'll get it because his footwork is so impeccable that you just get you think you got him, and then boom, he gets a layup. And you're like, how? I had him. Rudy Gobert's like, I got him. I had him stuck. But he just bum, and then you get to layup, and you're just like, how did he do that? How does this slow dad bod looking guy able to get to his spots at will, and especially at the high when he's on the high post, he's getting past, and you it's just it's the same thing with Luka too. Like you just how, but he's just able to. He understands how to use his body, and his footwork is just absolutely elite.
Let's talk a little bit here about all-time stuff, right? And I was writing about a piece about Jokic, which I'll be, publishing this weekend. And if you think about the center position, might be the most stacked position of all-time great talent in NBA history, right? Mm-hmm. Because since the 50s up until like Jordan, every team, like, we got to get the 7-footer. We got to get, like, you look at over the years, we mentioned Kareem, like when the Blazers drafted Bill Walton, that was the vision. When the Blazers drafted Sam Bowie over Jordan, that was the vision, right?
Which is crazy. Like, now you would just draft Michael Jordan with the second pick and you make him and Clyde work. It's just crazy how back in the day, it was like, no, we have our 2 guard, we need our center, we need our power. You had to have each position. You couldn't draft 2 of the same guys. Back in the day, if you did that, you're like, oh, how do we do this? What's going on? We don't know how to do this, Crazy.
Yeah. And so because of that, you have like this all-time list of just crazy, crazy great centers, Russell, Chamberlain, Kareem, Ewing, Olajuwon, Shaq, all these guys. So Jokic obviously still in his prime, right? He's only in his 9th year. One would presume with the way his health has been going, he's got a few more years and then some of his prime left. I mean, where does he rank right now for you in terms of just like greatest centers that this game has ever seen?
Man, put me on the spot.
So I have him like behind Shaq. Like that's where I'm at. Like he's behind Shaq, and that's a lot because you're putting him over guys like David Robinson. You're putting him over guys like Ewing, Moses Malone. And maybe I'm not there with Moses yet. Maybe he's behind Moses, but
Moses Malone is tough. He gave him out of MVPs. Did Moses win a chip?
Yeah, with the 4-4-4 year, where he predicted they would sweep through, but they lost one game.
Yeah, so he had a chip. That's tough. I mean, you would probably. It sucks. That's the thing. You put him ahead of Pat. I mean, he's in the top 10 for sure. He's got to be outside the top 5 right now, I would say, because bigs wise,
probably go
5. You have Will, Shaq, Kareem, Olajuwon, Russell, Moses. Just off the top of the dome, I think you got to put him. I'd say 7th right now, and he can definitely pass Moses Malone this year with a chip. Or you can, that can be something that's back, flip of a coin, 6, 7. But yeah, he's knocking on the door top 5 right now. I mean, yeah, he's out knocking on the door, and I think maybe more. I think right now it's just about getting more. He got the MVP, so he's set there. It's about collecting the ring because that top 5, that's pretty prestigious, and
they all got at least 2. Yeah.
And and Will has the least there with 2, right? Russell has 11.
With Olajuwon.
Olajuwon has 2 also back to back. So yeah, I mean, and Olajuwon has one MVP, right? Defensive Player of the Year. I think he has a couple, right? It's named after him, the Defensive Player of the Year award. I would put him. I guess 6th or 7th. Yeah, he's in that range, that 6th to 7th range, and he's got to get more chips. The one guy that's tough to like. I don't know where people have Will. I don't know people with the rings. I don't know how people. I think he has every damn record in the world. He's definitely like 1 or 2. But yeah, I mean, I think right now Jokic is 6 and 7, which is impressive because, like I said, he's in year 9 and he still has how many more years left of great basketball? 5, 6 possibly, especially with his style. So we don't know.
And he's always healthy. He doesn't really get hurt.
He
Yeah.
doesn't miss games, and who knows? He might have another 2 MVPs in him, the 5 MVPs with, let's say, 3. That could get him definitely in top 3 range by when it's all said and done. But yeah, right now I would say 6 or 7. Let's say he's tied with Moses. I'll give him that. It's tied. He's tied with Moses.
Yeah, I think what hurts him right now, and this isn't anything he could control, but obviously championships is the one. You mentioned that already. He got one, so he's already in better standing than somebody like
And
Ewing,
a finals
or
MVP.
even David Robinson, because obviously Robinson did it later in his career once they had
second
acquired
one,
Tim Duncan. So he kind of gets a little short end of the stick there when kind of discussing him. But the other thing is numbers accumulation, right? Being able to just like, for when people go on the basketball reference page and they want to see who the top scorers and rebounders and assist guys of all time are. Yeah, obviously he hasn't been playing long enough to be able to top those lists yet. I think from a analytics perspective, he might be one of the greatest centers to ever walk on the court. Period.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
From like advanced stats, VORP, that kind of stuff. So you probably have that there, and it's something interesting to consider because when it's all said and done, if he stays healthy, he could be rocketing up those assist numbers, rocketing up those rebounding numbers in addition to the points, which not many centers are a part of all three, and that kind of speaks to his versatility as a big man, and kind of again the poster child for how all of this has changed because like you used to have big men who could pass out of the post, but it wasn't to this level, and you mentioned earlier being able to elevate a guy like Aaron Gordon. I couldn't stand Aaron Gordon in Orlando. I thought he was so overhyped. And he goes to Denver, grows some dreads, and all of a sudden he's in the dunker spot and he's hitting threes. And it's the perfect fit because he's playing with the perfect big man to complement his style. KCP has flourished there. Obviously, Bruce Brown, when he was there, he flourished there. Jamal has done wonders in Denver, and they have a great organization, and you need that sometimes. A lot of players, the truly great ones like LeBron, they elevate really bad teams, but you can't take that away that he developed it. And again, you mentioned they drafted Nurkic, and he proved to be the right decision. I want to talk a little bit more about the draft stuff, though. You alluded to it earlier. Obviously, now it's a moment that is kind of infamous that when he was selected, they were airing a Taco Bell commercial, and he was a second-round pick. The second round, you find some decent players. Not too often that you find first ballot Hall of Famers, though. So, off the top of the mind, another one that comes to mind that will probably be inducted pretty quickly to Hall of Fame, those second-round pick, is Draymond Green for the Warriors. But would you say that Jokic is the best second-round pick of all time?
He's the best draft pick of all time.
Oh, okay.
He's the best draft pick.
That for me.
He's the best. What better value do you get in a draft pick than a 3-time MVP and triple-double machine and a future Hall of Famer? It's the greatest draft pick in NBA history. I mean, when you're the number one pick, or you're a lottery pick, or you're a first-round pick, you're expected to be good. If you're the number one pick, you're like Wemby's supposed to be great, right? He's the number one pick, generation, all that. When you're the I don't know if he was the 41st pick or whatever. He was in the 40s, right? And you're drafted during, they essentially don't even care because you're getting drafted during a commercial. There's no expectations. So even if the guy makes the team, that's a success. You hit. If the guy makes the team and he's able to get a 2-year, $4 million contract, like what Deuce got, even McBride got, that's a success. You got value. What better value is getting a guy who's now a 3-time MVP, All NBA, how many times? Multiple time All-Star, 1-year championship, Finals MVP. It's Draymond Green's up there. The value, what he's able to do. Brunson might one day be there, for the value we're getting from him in New York. But Jokic, I mean, there's no better value than getting. I mean, just think about it. Your first two, like Jamal, you got obviously great. He's done great for them as their first pick. But Nurkic was supposed to be. You didn't even think about Jokic. You passed up on him. you for a big. The guy plays same position, and that's the face of your franchise. Your third pick in your draft is the face of your franchise, and is getting triple doubles and 3M. It's the greatest draft pick of all time. I can't think of another guy that you've gotten more value than in the second round pick. It's not like the NFL where you still no, in the NBA we know, especially now recently. Now we're seeing more second round picks have more expectation because we're seeing so much young guys coming out with the one and dones and all that. But
Right.
that was still a time where second round picks was like, whatever. It doesn't really matter. That's why no longer will we see commercials for second round picks anymore. but in that time and in the mid 2010s, people didn't care about second round picks because there was no expectation. So for them to get all that value, I think it's the greatest draft. Not just the greatest it's the greatest second round pick of all time by far. But to me, it's the greatest draft pick of all time because you got the most maximum value from a pick that you could possibly get. Like when you go from no expectations to, oh, this is the face-off franchise, and he got his 3 MVPs and the championship. I don't think there's a better value pick of ever than Jokic in the second round in the 40s. Like to me, greatest draft pick of all time.
Yeah, you kind of think about it from the scope of the guys who won those many MVPs. They're all top picks, right?
They're all top
Larry
picks.
Bird, Jordan,
look at the centers that are
Kareem.
ahead of him. Yeah, look at all the centers ahead of him that we talked about. Shaq was the number 1 pick. I don't remember. I'm sure Wilt was the number 1 pick. I think Russell was top 3, whatever, and all that. Hakeem was the number 1 pick, and all that. So we look at all these guys we're talking about. They were supposed to be. They were the guys in college, right? Shaq was the dude at LSU. Hakeem was in Houston. Wilt, in Kansas. What? They were the guys. So they were expected to be this great. Nobody knew this guy. This maybe some people are like, yo, watch out for this guy overseas. He's pretty talented and all that. But to be like, yeah, that guy's gonna be. We knew Shaq was gonna be a future MVP champion, all that. Wilt, Kareem, all these. Kareem had the greatest basketball career of all time. He was the number 1 pick UCLA. So like all these guys had expectations to be great, and they fulfilled it, and that's impressive. It really is. But for a guy that you had no expectation, we didn't even know if he's gonna make the team. He might have been overseas for the rest of his life. To get what we've gotten from him, and there's still more to come. That's why I think it's the greatest pick of all time.
Let's kind of close out here on looking ahead in the West here. Let's just assume that Jokic is like all these European guys and wants to stay with the team for most of his prime. Let's just say he stays in with Denver for the next 6-7 years. The West now is in a weird inflection point where young teams are getting really good. Oklahoma City is going to be a title contender for multiple years. Minnesota looks like they figured some stuff out, and with Anthony Edwards and Towns and Gobert. Obviously, the Spurs are going to be coming up in a few years once they finally get Wemby some surrounding talent. And, a lot of these older teams are kind of starting to fade away. Like your Golden States, Phoenix, LA, Lakers, and Clippers, for that matter, as well. So looking ahead for Jokic in the West, is the opportunity going to be there, or do you foresee him successfully getting to multiple more finals in this run that he's on?
Yeah, I think they have the good nucleus. Now they'll probably have to revamp the bench and all that, and they have some young guys and like Julian Strawther, and Peyton Watson, we've seen a little sprinkles of them this season and all that, but they'll have to have bigger roles in the next few years because they do got to get a little bit younger, on there. But I still think they're still going to be in it, because of just the cohesion they have, the great coach they have, and that sometimes trumps some of these younger teams that are on the come up. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, Houston's a team that's on the come up too. They almost made the playoffs this year. Udoka is a really great coach. We know he can coach, and they got vets there. They added Van Vliet and who's the other guy from Memphis?
Dylan Brooks.
Yeah. So they added some vets in there, and like you said, San Antonio. Could they have an OKC type leap? Where now next year they're like a play-in team, and then next year after that is where they truly blossom. Like I said, they got the right pieces around them, and they still got pop there. So, but yeah, as long as he's playing at the level he's playing, just like we mentioned before, he's not playing with all-stars and he's leveling them up. And just imagine if there's a world where they get somebody else, who is an all-star caliber player to play. You don't think people would want to play with him? He makes life easy for anyone. So that's still a world where that can happen. Somebody teams up with him if they feel like maybe they've capped out. So, yeah, I still think they still have their championship window to me is still relatively it's fairly open. So I don't think it's not closing too much, and to me what proved it was the last game they just played where they destroyed Minnesota at Minnesota. That showed that they still have that veteran leadership, that veteran toughness. That hey, we whatever we don't know what happened those first two games. It just basketball things happen. We figured it out, and then we took care of business against a younger team that hasn't had that experience, understanding how to close out a series. We do, and we're on the road, so we just gotta do the little things, and they did the little things like they've always done all year, and they figured it out. So I still think the championship window is relatively open by a lot.
You mentioned a potential all-star type guy joining them. Is there anybody on the horizon that you would kind of say, you know what, that would be an awesome fit with Denver?
It would have to be like a what's crazy? Him and SGA would be. I mean, not that it's gonna happen, but like a player of that.
A dream.
Yeah. I know there's like pipe dreams of like him and Luka. That I don't know how that would work. That would be interesting and all that. But Luka and Kyrie have worked, and I know that's guards, but Luka has showed that he could play with another star-like player and all that. But I don't know that you would have to. I mean, him and Steph. Thinking that, I mean, there's something like that. Like,
what would be fun, Chris? I think you go back to the OKC him and Jalen Williams. Now, Jalen Williams, obviously still a young player.
Yeah.
But if you're able to get him in there, because he's blossoming into a star type player. Yeah, I don't think OKC is going to be able to retain him, or they're going to have to lose some of these guys. Holmgren, Dort, Kason Wallace. These guys, like, they're still young on rookie deals, luckily for them. Yeah. But, I think OKC is going to lose some players. And if I was Denver, I'd be keeping my eye out on that situation, just to see if any of those guys could come available to take that team at a sustained level, because it's hard to continue to compete for championships. We've been spoiled over the years, like with Jordan going year after year, Kobe and Shaq or just Kobe, I should say, going or being a contender year after year, the Warriors and LeBron going to the finals so much. It's hard. It's not easy to capitalize on that window, and because teams are always coming for you. And I think he's great enough to do it, like to your point. And the West is getting interesting, but it's you still got to go through that Serbian in Denver, man. That's the thing, right? So
yeah, they still got to go through the big man and all that. But they have some good young players that I think next season, another year in of NBA basketball that they played, that they'll get more trust and all that. And if he trusts you, I mean, you see what he does with Aaron Gordon, you see what he does with Michael Porter Jr., you see what he's with Jamal Murray. You can thrive. So they may not even need another star, but if they could just continue to hit on these draft picks, these late rounders and all that. Christian Braun too is another one. Like, I think we'll see a significant third-year leap for him. But just a couple more hits, and they may be able to just, if they find somebody, it might just be do it through draft and not have to do it through
that's what they've been doing, right? They're like, hey, we're going to get these multiple year college guys. They're ready to go. We could get them with later picks because they're not going to be coveted in the lottery. And you saw with Brown, you saw with Payne Watson, just like these guys who they feel like fit the archetype of what they're looking for, and they could, develop them into some great role players. Chris, man, you've been gracious with your time. I appreciate it. As always, just chopping it up with you. See, you got the Knicks hat, Knicks in 5, the vibes. Knicks in 5. We'll see. But just let everybody listening know where they could follow all your stuff at.
Yeah. Appreciate you having me on, man. It's always a pleasure talking hoop with you. Yeah, you can follow me on Off the Ball Pod. That's where I'm on X, Instagram, Off the Ball Pod on Facebook. That's where I have post all the shows and all that. Offtheballnetwork.com. Like I said, you do a lot of good stuff. I'm gonna be posting more NBA draft stuff. We do some profiles soon. I'm gonna get dive back into the draft and all that. Especially once the Knicks, whenever the Knicks season goes, I'll go full. Well, I'm too invested in the Knicks right now to even think about the future picks and all that. But catch me there. Up about to do episode 200 of my podcast, so that's going to be pretty cool. 200 episodes. I mean, they say it's hard to get past episode 1 and to get to 200 and, to do all the cool stuff I've been able to do these last 4 years has been really fun. So you can follow me there. I'm always talking ball, whether it's college basketball, recruiting, high school basketball, anything basketball related. I'm always talking. So follow me Off the Ball Pod there. And we're going to continue our series, the what if. I know if you guys haven't listened, check out the Orlando. Well, what if Shaq never left Orlando, part 1 and 2, kind of talk about the Orlando side, the Lakers side. We're going to be working on Brandon Roy next. I can't wait to do that, and get in the lab and talk about that, because that one's a really good one and all that. So follow me on there. Like I said, always talking hoop, man, and a pleasure to always a pleasure talking to you, brother.
Thank you, Chris. As always, make sure to check all of Chris's links out. They'll be in the episode description on this episode. If you enjoyed this podcast, make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or directly on Substack at deepcover.substack.com. Thanks again for tuning in. Thank you, Chris, for joining me, and we will see you all next time.